Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our parent education webinars for the Entry to School program. Today, we'll be discussing developing communication skills, and we're excited to have you here with us. My name is Asha Schmidt, and co-hosting with me today is Alex Fawcett-Drummond. We are both BCBAs supporting the Entry to School program here at Erin Kids in the role of clinical supervisor. Thank you for taking this hour out of your day to participate in the webinar with us. For this edition of our webinar series, we'll review what early communication behaviors are and how we can support their development. Today, we're going to be going through what communication is, the functions of communication, and strategies to support communication. The foundations for communication. So really, we're looking at building communication from the bottom up. It's important to remember that communication is so much more than words. Before a child's first words, they're learning from their environment, watching, noticing, sharing, and communicating with us non-stop. Language is so much more than just talking. It's comprised of a necessary set of skills that lay that foundation for children to become successful communicators and participants in social interactions. Eye gaze starts in infancy. Are they watching us move around? They're shifting their gaze from objects to people. They're shifting their gaze around the room. Eye gaze and gestures need to be in place before we can then move on to sounds and words. As you can see from the pyramid graphic here, the foundation of communication begins with intentional eye gaze, then moves through much more complex and sophisticated means of communicating, such as moving to gestures, which can include pointing, hand leading, waving, then moving on to sounds such as babbling, words, and then sentences, combining all of those skills. So how do we communicate? We communicate with our bodies, our eyes, gestures, sounds, words. All behavior is a form of communication. Communication really becomes a tool for regulating our behavior and interacting with others and acquiring knowledge. Ways that we can communicate, again, vocal communication with our words, with our sounds, and non-vocal communication using our gestures, eye gaze, body language. There's so much to be said about how someone's body shows us what they actually want and what they're trying to communicate to us. When the foundation for language development is disrupted, children become at risk for developing challenging behaviors or communicating in unconventional ways that can make it difficult for people around them to understand them, and vice versa. So pre-verbal communication. So the foundation of developing communication begins with joint attention in the form of eye gaze. So before we get into gestures and first words, it's really important that there is a solid foundation of joint attention and intent to communicate. Joint attention is made up of the child being able to shift their attention to their social partner and pay attention to the same object, event, or idea together. For example, a fire truck drives by and your child is so excited. They look to you to share that feeling about the fire truck, and you're excited too, and you're excited together. Shared affect is the ability to express emotions to the people around them through facial expressions, intonation, behavior, and eventually words. Going back to the fire truck, the shared affect is the excitement that you both feel about the fire truck. Excitement is the shared emotion about seeing the same thing, that fire truck. Shared intent and intent to communicate means the child has come to understand what intentional communication is to get their needs and their wants met. This is deliberate and effective. For example, the child might try to get you to look at them when they need you for something, such as passing them a toy or opening a snack container. They look or they gesture towards you to get you ready for them to send a message. In other words, they get your attention so that they can communicate a need or a want with you. Vice versa, in order to get your child's attention so you can communicate something to them, you might call their name. You might wave at them, tap them on the arm or the shoulder, or some other behavior that you engage in first to get their attention and then tell them something. This is why eye gaze is such an important indicator that your child has established joint attention and that intent to communicate. Eye gaze, as we've said before, is that first step in establishing the foundation for language development. It's also really important to acknowledge that joint attention is a core deficit for children with ASD. Children with ASD have difficulty responding to faces and social and environmental cues from their parent and from others in their environment. It's important that when we are teaching communication, that we find the developmental gaps and start from the bottom up, practicing that foundation of communication. Without establishing eye gaze, other forms of communication become less effective and less meaningful. Without the child's intent to communicate, attempts of practicing that communication will become less effective and less valuable. So natural gestures. So in communication, it is so valuable to recognize the importance of natural gestures. While the order may be slightly different, children should be using at least 2 new gestures each month between 9 and 16 months. Shaking their head no, reaching to be picked up, pointing to say look, reaching for something that they want. I don't know where are all examples of natural gestures that they might use to communicate. The richest moment for language learning are when the child and the caregiver are sharing attention on the same thing, and the caregiver is talking about the child's focus of attention, creating opportunities to learn that stem from that social interaction together. If a child is not using these early gestures, then the caregiver may not have the chance to respond and follow the child's focus, which in turn could limit the child's opportunity for both language learning and social interactions. This is where children begin to understand, I am sending a message to someone. As a child's gestures are developing between 9 and 16 months, you should also see other social communication milestones. The use of eye gaze, facial expressions to share attention and emotion, an increasing rate of communicating with sounds and gestures, and a wider variety of actions in play, as well as an emerging ability to comprehend the meaning of spoken words. So some strategies we've listed here to help promote eye gaze and gestures include things such as joining in on your child's play. So this could be difficult at times, but it's important to be persistently playful and continuing to make attempts to intrude on your child's play. Next, we want to play face-to-face games with them. This is things like peekaboo, tickles, being in their face so they can see you and we can work on that joint attention and eye gaze. Making yourself interesting, getting excited if your child looks at you for even a short moment. Be animated with your actions and about what your child is doing. Make the activity more interesting for them. Sometimes when we imitate children, they get excited that we are interested in what they're doing, and they look back at us to see if we're still imitating. Anticipation activities also are a great way to work on these. Blowing up a balloon, and then they pause before letting go to build the anticipation so the balloon flies around. You might need to give some freebies at the start so that your child learns what actions to expect. The next thing we need to really think about is comprehension and knowing that it is the cornerstone of language. So how do children respond to intentions and meanings of others, right? Children are able to read the environment. They're able to read the intentions of others, and children are able to predict what others might be thinking. As the child develops, they begin to get information about others' thoughts, ideas, and plans. They learn when to anticipate what is coming next in the environment by noticing cues in their environment and the people around them. So as we just said, they're able to read the environment. For example, when I see my plate on the table, I know dinner is coming. Children are able to read the intentions of others, such as when my dad grabs his car keys, I know that he's leaving. Or they're able to predict what others might be thinking. When I get scared, I know I can go to dad for a hug and he'll be there for comfort. Children with ASD are skilled at noticing cues in the environment, such as sounds, object placement. However, there is a deficit when it comes to anticipating the intentions of others and predicting the intent of others. So keep in mind, the ability to read others is important groundwork for successful reciprocal social communication at back and forth. It's also important to teach children to respond to our words and that words are worth listening to. As children learn to respond, they begin to develop the concept that language has meaning. It's symbolic to something, that each word means something specific. It's usually easy to notice all the new words that a child uses. However, it's also essential to recognize the important role that comprehension plays in the process. As much as we keep track of the words children are saying, it may also be helpful to pay attention to the words that they are actually understanding. For example, when they hear the word up, do they put their arms up to be lifted? When they hear the words get your boots, do they know where their boots are? Research suggests that our ability to comprehend spoken language is the best predictor of language competence. A child with a few words and strong comprehension skills will be much more successful in school versus a child who has memorized many different words without actually understanding their meaning. So first words and language development. When we consider first words and language development, it's important to recognize that as children's vocabulary grow to about 20 to 50 words, they begin combining words in short sentences or phrases. Mastery of word combinations gives the child the power to not only name things and people, but also to describe and show actions and represent feelings, events, and concepts. When considering a child's first words and language development, it's important to note what that typical development might look like. Early words typically start to emerge around the child's first birthday. Most words start out as those approximations: ma, ba, pa, da, ta. Words paired with gestures have meaning, such as ba whenever a child sees a ball. Word approximations then turn into simple words, and their vocabulary begins to grow around that 18-month mark. Mastering words also gives the child the tools to make things happen, name things, people, and describe actions, feelings, and ideas. For example, ta could turn into tata, could turn into tutu, tuti, and with practice become cookie. As a child develops more words, the meaning of the word cookie as a label can become a request for more cookie versus sharing information, my cookie or no cookie. The word no is also very powerful. No could turn to no milk, indicating I don't want that, versus no daddy, indicating where is daddy, or daddy isn't here. So thinking about reasons why we might communicate. So why? What is the function of our communication? So that really differs from how we communicate, which is the form of our communication, that vocal or non-vocal, using the gestures or the vocal words or sounds. Requesting is the first way that a person communicates, and it starts in infancy when an infant cries for food or to be changed, for example. Depending on the child's development, requesting can look like gestures, as we talked about earlier, such as pointing to a desired item, reaching up to indicating wanting to be picked up. It could also be eye gaze when a child looks at a person blowing bubbles and indicating that they want more. Depending on what we're working on, the end expectation is that the child is requesting using their eyes, gestures, and words, combining all of those pieces together. Sometimes a child may engage in challenging behavior as a request. Examples could be such as a gesture pushing a spoon away to indicate not wanting the food, saying no when asked to complete a task that they don't want to do, or flopping to the ground when asked to go somewhere that they don't want to go. All of this is a form of communication and of request. It's important to remember that though those gestures and other indicators such as eye contact are forms of functional communication in both requesting and protesting, it's important that we continue to respond to them to reduce frustration that can lead to more challenging behavior. You can learn more on how communication and challenging behavior go together in the challenging behavior edition of this webinar series. And we strongly encourage you to watch that after this edition, as the topics covered are very closely aligned.
We're going to chat now about some strategies to promote communication. These include following your child's lead, commenting versus questions or offering choices, setting up opportunities to teach requests, so communication temptations, keep giving your child a role and support their comprehension, and then using modeling, so gestures, sounds, and single words. First things first, we want to follow your child's lead and motivation. If your child likes movement, engage them in a horsey ride, tickles or chase games, or bouncing on a large ball. Commenting versus questions or offering choices. This is a big one. When your child is looking at books, comment on the pictures, describe the pictures, add sounds with minimal expectations. Be mindful of how much you're commenting or labeling things relative to how many questions you're asking of your child. Be careful to avoid asking too many questions about pictures in the books, but simply label what you see. Look, a farm. Not, what is this? Is this a farm? Do you see a farm? Who lives on a farm? Keep it simple, easy, and to the point. Next, we're going to chat about setting up opportunities to teach requests, or what we usually refer to as communication temptation. Put preferred items out of reach. Keep preferred items in clear containers, so your child needs your help to open them and access them. Hold a handful of your favorite snack and give them 1 or 2 pieces at a time so they can practice asking for more. Next, keep giving your child a role and support comprehension. Remember, when your child has a role or a job to do, your child is learning. For example, when you're cooking, ask your child to open or close a cupboard. Model gestures, sounds, and single words. Children love sounds and gestures. Sounds and gestures help your child notice you and provide learning opportunities, such as blowing bubbles. Oh no, wow, pop. We're going to dive a bit more into following your child's lead or their motivation. The function of requesting or protesting as communication is to access a desired item or activities, so the communication response has to match that motivation. What you do immediately following your child's attempt at communicating with you will help them learn how to be more effective with their communication. For example, if they put up their arms to be picked up and you pick them up, they will be more likely to put their arms up again in the future. But if they put their arms up to be picked up and you offer them a toy, they may not learn to use this gesture or this action to be picked up. In other words, your response to their communication has to match what they're trying to communicate. They need to want to communicate. When we are following their motivation, there needs to be intent, a reason to communicate. There has to be value in that moment to communicate. Remember, in teaching communication, there needs to be an established joint attention. If a child gives you an item and walks away, there's very minimal communication happening, and it doesn't give the partner a chance to respond. As a communicator, the child should be able to anticipate the response instead of walking away and still expecting the person to understand them. Use preferred activities to practice. If the parent is practicing better communication skills for open and the child is excited to play with Play-Doh, the parent should expect the child to hand them the Play-Doh, give eye contact or some sort of eye gaze, and either communicate with a gesture or a word, depending on your child's abilities. Use items, activities, and routines your child enjoys to create opportunities for communication. Ways to set up communication temptations. Place items out of reach. Try using hard to operate toys. Be silly. Give just a little bit at a time. Offer choices and use a wait and see approach. Let's talk about these a bit more. Place items out of reach. This is pretty straightforward. Put a favorite toy up on a shelf where they can't reach it, or put a favorite food in a container that's hard for them to open on their own. Use hard to operate toys. Consider wind-up toys or balloons or bubbles. Items your child can't operate on their own and they need your help and social interaction to engage with. Do the unexpected and be silly. Make mistakes on purpose. See if your child notices and wait to see if you get their attention or a reaction. For example, put a bowl on your head and call it a hat. Touch your nose and make a beep sound, or pretend a banana is a phone and take a call. Give just a little bit at a time. Pour only a little bit of juice in his or her cup at a time, so your child will need to request more. Give one puzzle piece, one block, or one item needed for a task to encourage them to ask for more. Offer choices. Hold up 2 choices so you can start with one preferred and one non-preferred to teach choice making. For example, hold up a cookie and a carrot and ask which one they want. This gives your child an opportunity to communicate what they want instead of just taking what they want. Finally, there's the wait and see approach. If your child needs help with something, for example, putting on a shirt, shoes, or opening a container, wait before helping to see if your child will make a request or indicate that they need your help. Missed opportunities. Think about how the core deficits of autism can interfere with learning opportunities. The core deficits include tuning out people's voices, sticky attention to objects, making it difficult to notice cues in the environment, easily missing the language of caregivers used outside of the child's attentional focus, or difficulty predicting the actions and intentions of others. Practice is important. Continuing to give your child a role in your daily routines, promoting communication by offering choices, pausing and waiting will all keep your child aware of what is happening in their environment and really minimizes those missed learning opportunities. There are thousands of teachable moments every day. While it's obviously not feasible to capture each one, try focusing on just a few that you can work on consistently to build up that strong foundation. And as your child starts to develop their communication skills from those, you can extend to other opportunities and other routines throughout the day. Let's take a moment to reflect. Now that we've discussed communication and giving your child opportunities to communicate throughout the day and across routines, think about different activities you're doing now with your child on a daily basis. Consider, which activities is your child communicating with you? Which routines are going really well? Where is your child looking up at you, reaching you, and making choices? An example might be if your child really enjoys bath time. Are there specific toys they enjoy? Try using those to offer choices, or put them just a little bit out of reach. You can also try commenting on how they're playing with the toys or imitating how they're playing. These are all ways to engage with your child and invite them to join you. This is that shared attention we talked about earlier. Then consider which activities your child is less likely to communicate with you. Which activities are still challenging? Where is your child having a hard time communicating their needs and wants? Challenging activities are likely difficult, because your child is trying to communicate something about it that they don't like. Maybe it's too hard. Maybe it doesn't feel good. Maybe they just don't want it. Consider how you can help them learn to communicate more functionally instead of engaging in challenging behaviors. There's lots more on this in the challenging behavior edition of our webinar series. Be mindful, though, that when a child is already escalated or they're already engaged in challenging behavior, trying to teach a new skill or trying to push them to communicate when they're not strong communicators yet may not be effective. It's best to work on new skills, especially communication skills, when the child is happy, relaxed, and engaged. Going back to that bath time example is a good way to think of this. Provided bath time might be an enjoyable and fun routine, that's when you might try working on communication. If bath time is not the time to work on communication. Pick another routine to start with. That's it for today. We strongly recommend practicing at home. And the next webinar in the series is working through challenging behaviors. If you have specific questions about how your child communicates, how you can anticipate what they might be working on, or what skills might be next in their development, definitely reach out to your clinical team and they'll be happy to support.